Does The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild take place before Wind Waker? Personally, I say no, but with more gameplay on Breath of the Wild being released, many fans are changing their opinions on where the timeline can take place. We have fans believing that it takes place in the following timelines: after Skyward Sword, after Ocarina and the Downfall timeline, after Ocarina and the Child timeline, and surprisingly after the adult timeline right before Wind Waker. Now, personally, I am a big believer in this game taking place after Ocarina and the Downfall or Child timeline, but also, I want to debunk why this game may not take place before the events of Wind Waker. Let's start off this theory, shall we? Ever since we have received footage earlier this year of the Koroks in Breath of the Wild, fans immediately pointed this game to take place in the adult timeline. Well, that was until we saw the Temple of Time and thought to ourselves, they can't be in the same game, can they? After all, the Temple of Time is very similar to Ocarina's concept of the temple. But then we saw the old man who fans think is the King of Hyrule from Wind Waker due to similar appearances. Honestly guys, I think this king could be anyone, perhaps even Zelda's father. But I do believe he is an important character as his dialogue states that he is a strange old man. And if you know anything about the word strange, it's that he's hiding something, or at the very least, someone crucial to the game's story and plot. But I have to cover him in another theory. As for the Koroks, it's something I mentioned during my previous theory about the 100-year sleep. To quickly sum it up again, I believe that the Koroks didn't change just because of the Great Flood, but rather because an evil threatening their existence causes them to change. In other words, a defense mechanism. In the case of Breath of the Wild, it's possible that Calamity Ganon is what causes them to change forms. The change from Kokiri to Koroks allow them to easily maneuver across Hyrule, as it is way bigger in this game than Ocarina, and it might be the only way they can leave the woods as Kokiri will die. Another reason why I believe this game doesn't take place in the adult timeline is because of the nature of Ganon. What do I mean by that, you ask? Clearly, if we look at the nature of Ganon in the Downfall timeline, he causes a lot of destruction and is more shattering. In the Wind Waker, Ganon is depicted as more calmer, wise, but still at the very least evil. Well, of course he is evil, he doesn't go on a full-on rampage like in most Zelda games. If you don't believe me, you should see the speech he gave to Link before their final battle in Wind Waker. Also, Calamity Ganon looks like a pig, fitting most of the Ganons in the Downfall timeline. If you haven't caught on to what I'm saying by now, the Ganon in this game is depicted out of control and chaotic, not fitting the Ganon we see in Wind Waker. Instead, the Downfall timeline, or Child timeline, would fit him best in my opinion. But then again, people can change, especially the King of Evil. Now, back to Wind Waker. I want to thank one of my subscribers for finding this. This is when Link is talking with Laruto, a deceased Earth Sage, and she says, after his defeat at the hands of the Hero of Time, Ganondorf is sealed away, but not for all time. He was revived, and he returned to Hyrule in Red Wrath. Now of course this description definitely fits the havoc we see Calamity Ganon bringing in the trailer. He can be seen destroying everything around him with a red aura. While this is very strong evidence for the game to take place in the adult timeline, I still hold my suspicions and think that it just happened to be a coincidence that her description matches the Ganon in this game. We know that eventually Ganondorf broke the seal, but there was no hero since Link was sent back in time by Zelda. Some fans believe that this isn't a prequel to Wind Waker, but rather a sequel to it. If this were the case, however, we probably wouldn't be seeing the Master Sword and a few similar landmarks such as Hyrule Castle, the Temple of Time, and the Sacred Grove. However, it is possible that this game takes place so far into the future that the sea has receded, and Hyrule re-established on its original land, with the dilapidated appearance having something to do with being buried underwater for so long. This is further supported by some demo players who found soul items that seem to indicate that there was once a sea covering the land. This could be referring to the Lanayru Sea in Skyward Sword, or the Great Sea in Wind Waker, or perhaps even another area we haven't seen yet take place in the game, as there will be flashbacks. It is confirmed that Link in this game will have past memories before his Great Slumber, so we may just have that question answered. Still though, The chances of this game taking place after Spirit Tracks or before Wind Waker are slim. The only way this could work, though, is if there was a new hero. But the beginning of Wind Waker obviously mentions that the hero is absent. We know this because Link was sent back in time by Zelda after defeating Ganon. The only way for this to make sense were if this game is a new timeline split in which the Great Flood is prevented. And Nintendo did state that this game would heavily connect to Twilight Princess. I mean, for crying out loud, there is a Wolf Link amiibo that allows you to have him as your partner. I highly doubt Nintendo would ever take that approach, but you never know. Nintendo loves to surprise us. Also, if this game would take place in the adult timeline, then what role or purpose do the Guardians have, and what about the Master Sword? Personally, if this was a prequel to Wind Waker, then the Guardians' roles were to protect Hyrule, until of course Ganon seized control of them somehow, but that will be for another theory. As for the Master Sword, Link clearly seized Ganon and stuck the sword inside his skull, and the kingdom along with him was left underwater for all eternity. This could be why the Master Sword in this game is rusted, because of the many years the sword has had to stay underwater. Still, there are other questions you have to ask yourself for this theory to make sense. How did the sword get back to the Sacred Grove? And how did Ganon escape the drowning of Hyrule, if that was the case? There have been many times in the Zelda series where Ganondorf has escaped his death, and has been unsealed many times. The problem with Wind Waker, however, is that he isn't sealed, but rather turned to stone. Either he was killed during the final battle with Link, or perhaps maybe removing the Master Sword from his head will bring him back to life. If this were the case then, we need to ask ourselves, how did he escape? The only possible way of escaping that state were if the Triforce of Power was triggered by something or by someone. But from all footage we've seen from Breath of the Wild so far, there is no second villain as of now. So far we only have Calamity Ganon and the Guardians as threats in this game. Now let's talk about the Zoros. Obviously in the Wind Waker, Zoros are turned into the Red Tails because of the Great Flood. This is a very big counter for the game taking place in Wind Waker. Not only that, but these Zoros are red, and have a few new forms such as this one that looks like a shark. To be fair on Wind Waker's part, we do see some kind of new bird race. Many fans think that these are the Rito, but I disagree, as they have a few differences in body parts, and there are many other bird races in the Zelda series. Now I consider the manga uncanon, but the Wadara are a race of bird people similar to the Rito, which appear only in the Ocarina of Time manga bonus story entitled Waru of the Watara. Another bird race we see in the Zelda series are Fukas in Zelda 2, and the Thunderbird, who is a boss of the Great Palace. So clearly a variety of bird races have been used in the Zelda series before. So I'm going to go with that this is some type of new bird race, or one of the two that I just discussed. Also, for a while now there have been suspicions of this traveling merchant character to be Beetle, and recently a close-up of the character during a demo play has confirmed this character to be Beetle. For those of you who don't know, Beetle is a character that has only appeared in Skyward Sword, Wind Waker, and Phantom Hourglass. While this may support him returning to the future adult timeline games, keep in mind that Nintendo has always reused their characters. For example, Dampé in Ocarina of Time also appears in A Link Between Worlds and Four Swords Adventures, which are all in different timelines. What I'm trying to say is that we shouldn't count it against minor characters to appear in other timelines. Now, if it was a different character we were talking about, such as Zelda, or important areas such as Hyrule Castle and then the Lost Woods, then yes, it would make sense for a big impact in the timeline. But I don't think Beetle should make a difference in determining where this game takes place, so it very well may be possible for Beetle to appear in any Zelda game again. In conclusion, I believe that there are too many contradictions for this game to be placed in the adult timeline, but to be honest, it's not impossible. Nintendo just may surprise us. We'll just have to see March 3rd. Hey guys, Zelda Conqueror here. I hope you guys enjoyed this theory, and like I said guys, I don't believe this game takes place in the adult timeline, but it's fun to think of ways that it could. If you guys agree or disagree on this theory, let me know in the comments below, because I'd like to hear your guys' thoughts and opinions. I'm going to go all out on Breath of the Wild for now, because we've just received a ton of footage and news. But I'll try my best, from time to time, to create other Zelda content that you guys would enjoy. If you guys haven't watched it already, A few days ago I made a theory on Breath of the Wild on what happened during Link's 100-year slumber. I would appreciate it if you guys would subscribe and like the video to show your support for more videos like these. Thanks for watching, guys, and Zelda Conquer, signing out.